Everyone, happy Memorial Day weekend. I'm Reverend Sue in service today with Charlie. We have our guest speaker, Reverend Andy, speaking today on the topic, boldly living a new story. Boldly. So we had to have a man give this talk, boldly. So I want to welcome you. If you could take a few moments to silence your phone, and then we are about to, everybody fix your hair. We're going to look over at the camera and wave to those people at home. Maybe they're even on their houseboats. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, here comes. Okay, you guys over here, looking good, looking sharp. All right. Awesome, awesome. And with that, our opening song.
Good morning, everybody. Given the title of the prominence of boldly in the title, I thought maybe I should play. But I'm not going to do that. I believe this is a Carrie Newcomer song. There at the table with my head in my hand, a column of numbers I just did not understand. You said add these together, carry the two. Now you can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. At a cold winter station, breathing into our gloves, it would change me forever, leaving for God knows what. You carried my bags, you said I'll wait for you. You can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. Late at night a call, and you answer the phone. The worst, it has happened, and I did not want to be alone. You quietly listened, you said we'll see this through. You can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. Here we stand breathless and pressed in hard times, hearts hung like laundry on backyard clotheslines. Impossible just takes a little more time. From the mighty ground comes a green volunteer. In a place we thought barren, new life appears. Morning will come whistling some comforting tune for you. You can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing.
It's a perfect song. Thank you so much. So I'm going to just go through a few announcements. Is there anybody here for the first visit today to our center? Welcome. I see you got a packet when you came in. Thank you, and we'll show you the grounds if you're interested afterwards. Love to share. And if anybody else, I think I see familiar faces here. I'm going to talk about the Hartsonger Choir. They're going to do a summer session, and it's going to be the rehearsals only here on Thursdays, but they're going to gather again, and you need to speak to Dalton about that if you want to join the choir for the summer. And with that, we're looking for the COVID vaccine so that everybody can sing safe, because that is still very much restricted from CDC. So we have to do this in a very safe way, and we're slowly progressing towards live music. But this way they can record in here, and it's going to present to you much better on Sundays when they're able to do that. So we're looking forward to that starting next week. And this is Dalton over here if you want to see him on that. There's Thursday. Thank you. And Creating Your Spiritual Rock, this is by Jennifer Seibert Harris and Jane Parsons. And I've kind of called it Painting the Rock, but it's also mosaic tiling on a rock. And a lot of people have gone to the straw bale house on your way to the coast and have done this process when they've done workshops. And we're going to do it right here. And these two ladies, Jane and Jennifer, are just live wires. They're entertaining, they're fun. They're going to bring you some snacks. They bring all of the beautiful jewels that we'll be using. All you need to do is find a rock that really speaks to you and just wash it up and bring it in here, and we'll just have fun next Saturday, June 5th, starting at 9 o'clock. Then on the following day, Reverend Michael McMorrow will be visiting us, and he has written a book called Blue Collar Spirituality, Finding a God That Works. A delightful man and very entertaining. He really speaks on many levels to many people. So we invite you to come and listen to his approach towards this philosophy. He's been in ministry for a lot of years. And with your workshop, by paying, I think it's $25 is all, and that'll start right after at noon to 2. You get one of his little books too, so you get to take that home with you. So look forward to that next Sunday, June 6th. Reverend Dr. Mary has her writing of spiritual practice starting June 17th, and there's sign-ups back there. Linda, thank you for being here today. She's our board member. And coming up June 20th is our Summer Solstice Barbecue and Drum Jam. It's also Father's Day, but we're celebrating all of that on June 20th, but we do need to know if you're planning on coming. We will have veggie burgers and regular hamburgers, but we need to prepare the food. So that's all going to start at 5:30. We've got phenomenal drummers that are coming, and it's just going to be a very festive evening, and we just want to knock the roofs off the apartments next door. How about that? There's just something about getting the drum beat going, rolling, and then pretty soon you feel your own heartbeat invested, and pretty soon you feel a sense of unity and oneness like never before. Also, just to tag on, there is a Save-A-Day, June 12th, and that's when we invite all of you to come help spruce up the center. And just kind of maybe if you could mark your calendar, that's on a Saturday. So that's all of the announcements I'm going to share with you. Before we do our usual routine with Craig coming up to do the reading, I'm going to invite Charlie to sound the bell one more time, just one single bell for Memorial Day. And I invite you to take the pause, take the time to allow to hear the bell, to go within, and to feel your heart open to what this day is remembering. So, Charlie? And we pause with that beautiful sound of the bell calling us home. I share this quote with you on this day. Take time to remember those who have fallen, but on every day after, do more. Put the freedoms they died for to greater and more nobler uses. And that's a quote from Michelle Goodrich from the book Slaying Dragons. So we do take this moment to remember, especially with all of the different troops coming home and all the many lives lost. And we just open to receive with great love those that return to safe ground. And for that I give thanks, and so it is. Thank you. Craig, would you like to come up, and then we'll follow through with our service.
In the words of Earnest Holmes, the law is our access to the original creative genius of our universe. The will of Spirit is already imposed to do all those things which we call upon as the automatic processes of nature, whether in our physical body or in the physical body of our universe. The functions of life are harmonious. They go in the direction that we give them. They can know no other. Knowledge of this alone can free us from an ignorant and self-imposed bondage.
Today we awaken to a greater idea of the divine's idea for each and every one of us. And we allow that to be a bold, new idea and adventure. And we stand in our truth today, and we stand in our power, and we recognize that we're always being beckoned forward to live a more beautiful, more powerful life in every way. And it begins with love. It begins also with gratitude for all that has happened to allow ourselves to be here today, to be strong, to be brave, and to take on the challenges that we meet each and every day with love and grace. So I give thanks for the community gathering today to come here to find a message, to find the inspiration that leads them to the greater ideas of who they are and how they can serve in this world. I give thanks for Reverend Andy and his wisdom and his way of presenting to us the truth. With deep gratitude, I release this prayer knowing that we are gathered as one now. And I release this knowing it's so. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you, Dalton. Reverend Andy Torkelson, please. Yay, welcome.
It's really wonderful to be here today. I'm always humbled in this wonderful building and this platform and all the wonderful teachers, people I consider my teachers who have stood here. And so it's like, I don't know. It's like, you know, a minor league baseball player dreaming about being on the mound in Yankee Stadium. This is kind of my Yankee Stadium, you know, so I really feel that way. And the people who founded this center and the people who have taken good care of it. And so it's interesting that Reverend Sue talked about, she emphasized that the boldly living a new story, and it takes a male to give this talk. And what's really interesting about her saying that is because this assignment put me into battle with my ego this week. And the reason for that is because when I saw the title, I started to step into it the way I would have done 5 or 10 years ago as a minister. So what came up for me was, the adventure of life and living audaciously and all that, which of course that's what we want to do. But I just kept kind of struggling with that, and so throughout the week, in working on it and thinking about it, I found myself pulled in another direction. But no, I can't go there. But I would come back, and so finally, I did what I usually find is the best way to go, which is to surrender and tell my ego to go kick rocks, and so I could do something. So let me share with you an archetype I would have used 5 or 10 years ago, which would be, in terms of pop culture, the Indiana Jones archetype. Imagine that the outfit and the hat and the whip, and going into frozen places and tropical forests and in caves, and he didn't care if it was snakes or spiders or whatever, or what booby traps he went after. He was just audacious, and the natives are chasing him around, and he jumps on a plane and he takes off, and he travels the world, and with audacity and all of that, and so we're drawn to that. And I was thinking about, so early on in the week, I was thinking about adventures, and it just so happens 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was reading the story about the North Pole expeditions in 1908 and 1909, the first one being Frederick Cook, and the second one being Robert Peary. And I think, there's a good adventure metaphor and everything. And so in reading the story, though, several weeks ago in a book by Barry Lopez, who's a great writer, there was another part of the story that stayed with me more than Frederick Cook and Robert Peary, and that was the Eskimos that they hired to help them and to guide them. And it's a really interesting relationship between themselves and the Eskimos. First of all, when these gentlemen came who of European descent came, we want to go find the North Pole, and they had all their readings and everything, and the Eskimos were like, why? Why do you want to do that? Been there, and so they, this whole thing of adventure and discovery, and the Eskimos were actually afraid of the region of the North Pole itself, and not for superstitious reasons, but because when you go there, it's hard to live there. There's no game, there's no resources, you're pulling yourself away from the coast, which is where the Eskimos live there. I would say, adventurous lives, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But they paid the Eskimos to do this, and there's indications that both Cook and Peary used some of the same Eskimos. And so these guys like, oh really, there's another European here who wants to take this frickin' trip, okay, like let's go, And they paid them well, and also the Eskimo people, the Eskimos genuinely liked Cook and Peary. They liked these guys because they felt like they showed up with some humility, and so they cared about people. And something I read in the book was the Eskimos looked at all these people who were coming to the Arctic region for 200 years, and they saw them as little children, and they felt so bad for them. So they come up here and they just die. They die so easily. They don't know how to be here. They eat out of cans and stuff like that, and they don't know how to be here. So their heart really went out to what we would call white people. And so they said, yeah, we'll help you do that. So they took the trip, and I went online this week, and I found the picture. This is a famous picture of Peary. And so supposedly they're at the North Pole, And there's he and a couple of the guys and the Eskimos, and he gives everybody a flag to hold to have the picture taken. And one of them was a flag of his fraternity at the college he went to. Another one was a university flag, then the United States flag, and then some flag about, I don't know, some geographic society. And these guys are standing there, here we are, took a picture. So the story that touches my heart is that they came back, and they all came back to the village, the area of the villages where these Eskimos lived. And the interpreter who spoke the Inuit language noticed that one of them walked over to the edge of the ocean. They were on an ice floe, and the salt water was right there. He took his gloves off, and that's what caught his attention, and he started to head for the water. He wondered what was going on, because in that north region, the last thing you want to do is get wet, because the water is so cold and the temperatures are so cold. I mean, you can die. Getting your hands wet can eventually take your life if you're not careful. This Eskimo took off his huge gloves. He knelt down, and he took up two hands full of salt water, and he stood there. And this guy goes, oh my God, he's holding this water. His hands are bare. And he brings it close to his face. And he said the following prayer. Creator, I can smell the walrus, the seal, the whale. I am home. Thank you. And I was so touched by that. Because if you think about an adventurous life, living life boldly, you look at the Eskimos in their traditional sense, living their life, they had to live boldly. They had to live adventurously. Because there were times they would go into the ocean, the water out on the ice, and maybe they wouldn't come back. That was a daily occurrence. And so what this basically says is, when I thought about this in metaphorical, metaphysical terms, holding the resource dear, let's call it the resource, creator. In metaphysics, a resource, this is spirit. I'm holding spirit. I'm back home. Thank you. And these are my resources. And the relationship that the Eskimos have with the resources, I want to talk about that metaphorically as well. They hunted those resources. They came into communion with those resources in order to live. And their spiritual systems were that they came into communion, they came into relationship, and at the time that the human being would come into contact with that other being whose life they were going to take, there was a sacred covenant that came together in that action. And the writer of the book I read said, for example, they harvest a walrus, and the walrus is taken back to the village after it's been opened up on a sled made of walrus hide, tied down with walrus straps. It's going to be cooked in walrus blubber. And there would be people in the village or in the gathering who would eat that walrus who were also wearing the skins of walrus. And think about that relationship, that sacred covenant that happens. So as a metaphysician, in terms of living my life boldly and a new story, because for the Eskimo, each hunt was a new story. Each time they left their dwelling and went out, it was a new story, and they had to do it boldly. I was thinking about my life. I was thinking, if I were to cup my hands and bring forward in a prayerful way and say, Creator, I am aware of, and I thought about my resources that as I've gotten older. And that's the difference between 5 and 10 years ago. As I've gotten older, and I'm experiencing another level of life that it's not asking me to be any less bold or any less new, but there are different parts to it at play. And so I cup my hands and I bring forward, and what came up for me, I've been doing this personal work for about 3 weeks since I read that story, was in my cupped hands, I would say, Creator, I am aware of grace, I am aware of curiosity, and I am aware of wisdom. Now, why did I choose those? Because in my life right now, when I start with the word grace, is that the last 3 years for me have been a number of challenges, some really obvious ones and then some smaller ones mixed in. And when I'm not on top of my game, I can show up in those challenges in disrespectful ways, in ways where I can say things that I later regret. Because the bottom line is I can show up in those in fear. You know that old thing that we talk about, if it's not love, it's fear. In metaphysics, it's not good and evil, it's love and fear. And fear comes up in those impatient ways, and the next thing I know, an hour from now or tomorrow, I'm hearing myself making a deeply held apology, because it's like, oh God, I can't believe I showed up that way. I'm so sorry. And sometimes it's to myself. I can't believe I showed up that way. And so grace is there as a way to move with things. And when I think of grace, I think of people like ballet dancers or great athletes. You know, and I mean, can you imagine me as a ballet dancer? You know, that's not a pretty picture. And so I have trouble coming to grace sometimes, you know. I can be clumsy and I can be awkward in terms of how I live sometimes when I've got fear going on. And so for curiosity, what is this important? And I was thinking about something specifically. I have been working with people as a professional in one way, shape, or form for over 35 years now, in all kinds of different ways. You know, sometimes I've had the word counselor connected to my name, and minister and some other things, but I've been working with people. And where I work in the residential drug rehab that I work in, I have been working more years than a whole lot of people that are my coworkers. In fact, I've been doing it a lot longer than two people who I work for. And so I mentioned ego before, and sometimes I will have someone who's been doing this kind of work even maybe half as long as I have, and they're giving me advice and stuff. And so I want to honor that relationship. I want to show up in love. I want to show up from my highest self. I want to show up boldly in that way, my highest self. You ever think of boldly as quiet? You ever think of boldly as, boldly means to own it, to be receptive, to be open, be receptive in a bold way. And so I want to do that because, again, I don't want the regrets. Well, something happened a few weeks ago with a coworker of mine who is, I'm old enough to be her grandfather, and she's only been working with people for 2 years professionally. And she and I were going to co-facilitate a group this one day with our clients, and so we got into a room, and we knew that the material we were getting into was dicey. And what I mean by that is the material was going to be provocative. And I'll be specific, it was going to go into the family systems of addiction. And this is an area when you work with people, you have to be very, very careful. Because when it comes to our families, I can say that about mom, but not you. We become very protective about our families, and I get that. That's true of all of us. But it's something we have to get into so our clients can begin to recognize some things in their lives and have a conversation about family systems of, let's say, unhealthy ways of living. Can you imagine sitting in a group and someone comes, okay, well, today we're going to talk about the unhealthy ways your families have been living, It's like, well, that ain't going to land. And so we were talking about this. So we looked at, and the material was pretty, it's kind of bulldozer kind of material, and say, okay, how do we do this? And so she said to me, she goes, Andy, she goes, when I go in that group room and I do groups, I always want to remember that we have been entrusted with somebody's children. And we have clients who range from 22 to 65. And I was like, oh my God. I had never in my career thought about that. You're somebody's child. In some way, shape, or form, your people, your ancestors, your parents have entrusted us with your well-being. As a professional counselor, you're supposed to, first and foremost, do no harm. That's the code. When you work with do no harm. Maybe you can't do any good, and maybe you can't help anybody, but do no harm. I love that. And I told her, and she and I did about 3 hours of this group, and with a couple breaks in there, and I told her at the end of it, and it really went well, because I took what she said, and I really showed up that way. And I told her I said, God, thank you so much for that. This little kid looking at me with my lined face and everything. And she said, well, you're welcome. I said, no, that was amazing. How it shifted in terms of how we showed up in that. So curiosity, when I think about those of us who want to live our authentic lives and want to live in a spiritually grounded way, we think about, we want to gain wisdom, and the connection between curiosity and that, the openness in that. We never know where the wisdom's going to come from. It's like the Eskimo who goes out to hunt. Within the practices of what he does or she does, they never knew when it was going to show up, and it had to be open to the environment. And this reminds me of this idea of being the hunter or being open to it. Again, it sounds like a contradiction, right? To hunt but be open. That's something else I read, that we think of Eskimos as, with the dogs out front and they got the sled and, hey, there's a polar bear, let's go run him down. They talk about the greatest asset to the Eskimo people in their hunting was patience. Sitting in an open-skinned boat, staring down into the water, waiting for something to surface, sometimes for half a day, because you would maybe only get a glimpse. The patience, the openness. So I was thinking about this idea of, what it is to live boldly and live a new story. And as you can tell, I'm kind of taking it from a yogic point of view. And what I mean by that, I'm not a great yoga expert. I know that Reverend Sue has an amazing yoga practice and has touched many of you in that way. But I took yoga class a few years ago, and I loved the teacher that I had. She was in Paradise, very spiritually grounded, and she talked about the core. And she talked about, and I wish I could remember all these poses, but I was like downward facing dog. I could do that pretty good, not very long, but I could do it. But some of those others, I'm like, can you imagine me with just one foot on the floor? And imagine this body doing that, it's just like, I had to really shift the weight a little bit, But she was amazing because she talked about coming back to the core. And the way she taught it was, she taught yoga not just in terms of the poses and everything, but in terms of how we live our lives. And as someone who cares about spirituality and cares about the way I am in the world and gets tired of apologizing, I want to come back to a place. The Eskimo coming back to a place. The Eskimo coming back to the core. And so this week, Some of my personal work, spiritual work, is in Taoism. I love the Tao, and I keep myself grounded in that. That's kind of like one of my daily kinds of things. And I read from the Tao Te Ching, what is firmly rooted cannot be pulled out. What is firmly rooted cannot be pulled out. So the European descendant said, we want to make this huge adventurous trip. And will you go with us? And so the individuals who saw really no point to it, but who wanted to be of service and cared about these people so they didn't perish out there, okay, we'll do that. No matter where they went out to and where they came back, there's a sense of the core. Creator, thank you. Thank you for giving me the resources to come back to my center so that I can take these trips. I can move out. The thing that I think we can all relate to is we find out that we are going to go spend some time in a difficult situation. But we want to go because we love the people. In the agape sense, if nothing else, right? So that was a few weeks ago. I went to a wedding. It was a family wedding. Oh, God. I come from a family of 50,000 fundamentalist Christians. And not only, it's not like, well, boy, I don't know what happened to Andy. He don't go to church anymore, and I don't know if he's into Jesus. I became a metaphysical minister, man. Wow. And there are some people in my family, God bless them, who see me as a spiritual enemy. That's cool, but it's like, wedding. Wow. But I love them. One of my sister's daughters, my sister and I have worked in our own way to repair our relationship over the years. She's so sweet. She doesn't want to see me in the lake of fire. I can respect that, But it's gotten in the way a little bit. So I remember it was one of those times, there's all kinds of gird yourself up. Okay, I'm going in. Come into the core. So it was going to be at this wedding. Now everything's a destination wedding, so you go out to a farm. Well, it used to be a farm, now it's a destination wedding place. It's funny, Come have the farm experience, but it's totally set up for stuff. But it's cool. It was nice. It's a beautiful place out in the orchards of Chico, if you're familiar, west of Chico. So I go out there. It was a beautiful day and everything. So I go out there and I was really doing my prayer work. I was getting ready for a couple days for this, going in. And so what my prayer was, I want to be authentic. I want to be loving. I want them to have a good experience with me, And what's a wedding? A wedding's got kind of it's got kind of those religious overtones. So, I knew that was going on. So I go in there, and this is so cool. My mom passed away when I was in my early 20s. And when she passed away, my dad, my sister, and I kind of got in disarray for a while. And in some ways, we kind of never really recovered because my mom was kind of the rock of our family. So my mom loved bottle brush and honeysuckle. She always, wherever she lived, she had plants of bottle brush, and around her back door. And in her home, when you came to see her, you always came in the back door. And the house she lived in for years, the back door was the kitchen, and she loved her kitchen. And she had honeysuckle on trellises all around that back door. And so when it was really blooming, you just walked in, and you had to fight the bees, but it was just smelled so good. So I parked out, I walk in, I parked way out just so I could walk in and just get my, okay, I'm good. Got to get some water up here. Thank you, Creator. It was like my going to the North Pole. It's like, why do you have to get married? So anyway, I walk in, and as I'm coming onto the property, and there's a pathway, and you start kind of getting into the experience, there was a bottle brush in full bloom over here, and there was honeysuckle, and that honeysuckle filled the air. And this is my mom's side of the family, not my dad's side. And I just felt her presence. And I felt like she was with me, in spirit. And so it's like, Creator, thank you so much. I'm heading on this journey, and you're here. The resources are here. Earnest Holmes says, and I'm going to end with this, and we started with Earnest Holmes, but I found a quote I found something in the textbook I wasn't super familiar with, but I really like this. Earnest Holmes says, the way to do this work is to begin right where we are, and through constantly applying ourselves to the truth, gradually increase in wisdom and understanding. And if daily we are realizing more of this divine truth and applying it, then we are on a great adventure. The core. The practice of this teaching calls for a positive understanding of the power of spiritual truth. He's saying, come back to the core. Come back to the core. And you will always be able to live audaciously, boldly, in a new story if you come back to the core. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
All good, holy, holy. All good, holy, holy. All in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. Let me know all is good, holy, holy. All good, holy, holy. All good, holy, holy. All in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. Let me know all is good, holy, holy. All one, holy, holy. All one, holy, holy. All in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. Let me know all is one, holy, holy. 'Cause all is love, all love, holy, holy. All love, holy, holy. All in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. Let me know all is love, holy, holy. All is God now, all God, holy, holy. All God, holy, holy. All in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. Let me know all is God, holy, holy. that's why all is good, all good. Holy, holy, all good, holy, holy. Oh, all in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. Now I know all is good, holy, holy. I said, all in my mind, in my heart, in my soul. Oh, let me know all is good, holy, holy. Oh.
Thank you. That's a nice touch. That's a fabulous talk. Thank you so much. Everybody do this. It feels good. It's such a beautiful symbol. I think I will reflect on that for days on end. Just that, going to the holy water and lifting it up. So thank you all for your attention today, and everybody that's been in service. I appreciate all of that. We have our offertory baskets at each exit, and Jill is here to be in the bookstore, I think. Is she still here? Yeah, okay. Yeah, the bookstore has those beautiful artwork from the prisoners that Mary talks about, so you might want to look at that on the entryway. They're just beautiful. We're raising funds for one of the gentlemen that's going to be released soon. So I think that's it for today. I think we're going to just do our affirmation of good, just knowing that all that you have given through your time, your service, your being here, your financial good, we recognize that that's a flow of abundance that continues to give here and to give elsewhere. So we are always, always grateful for the donations that we receive. But we'll close with our affirmation. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. And that life is my life now. Okay, let's feel it. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. And so it is. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you again, Andy. Reverend Andy. Thank you.